stop scrolling. Seriously, if you're over 65 or if you have a parent or grandparent who still drives, you need to hear this right now. Most people don't realize what's happening until it hits their wallet, or worse, until they get a letter in the mail telling them their license is being suspended. So stay with me for a minute, because what I'm about to share could save you hundreds of dollars, your driving privileges, and possibly even your life. I know that sounds dramatic, but this is one of those topics that almost nobody is talking about clearly, and the people who need to know it the most. Seniors who have been driving for 40, 50, even 60 years are the ones being caught completely off guard. They've been driving their whole lives. They know the roads. They're careful, experienced drivers. And yet, because of a rule change that most people have never even heard of, they're getting fined, losing points on their license, and in some cases being forced to surrender their license entirely. So let's talk about it. Let's break it all down in plain English. No legal jargon, no confusing government language, just you and me having an honest conversation about what's going on and what you need to do about it. Let's start at the beginning, because I think it helps to understand how we got here. For most of the 20th century, getting your driver's license was almost a one-time thing. You passed your test at 16 or 17, and as long as you didn't do anything seriously wrong, you just renewed your license every few years, paid your fee, updated your photo, and kept right on driving. The system assumed that once you were a licensed driver, you were always a safe driver. And for the most part, for most people, that worked fine. But here's what a lot of people don't realize. Around the late 1990s and into the 2000s, traffic safety researchers started noticing something in the data. Accident rates among drivers over the age of 70 were climbing. Not dramatically, not in a way that made headlines every day, but steadily and consistently, and when they dug into why, they found a few things that were hard to ignore. Vision changes, reaction time slowing down, medical conditions, things like diabetes, heart disease, sleep apnea, and early cognitive decline that can affect a person's ability to drive safely without them even being fully aware of it. Medications that cause drowsiness or slow your reflexes, these aren't character flaws. These are just the realities of aging. And the old licensing system wasn't designed to catch any of them. So, states started paying attention. And over the past 2 decades, quietly and gradually, many states have introduced what are called age-based driving regulations. These are specific rules that apply to drivers above a certain age, often 70, 75 or 80, that don't apply to younger drivers. And this is exactly where a lot of seniors are getting tripped up, because nobody sat them down and explained that the rules had changed. Now stay with me here, because this is where it gets really important. One of the biggest changes, and the one that is catching the most people off guard right now, involves medical self-reporting requirements. Let me explain what that means. In a growing number of states, if you are above a certain age and you have been diagnosed with certain medical conditions, you are legally required to report that diagnosis to your state's Department of Motor Vehicles. We're not talking about something obvious like if you just had a stroke and can't move your left arm. We're talking about conditions that your doctor may have mentioned almost in passing, things like mild cognitive impairment, early-stage Parkinson's disease, certain types of seizure disorders, even controlled diabetes in some states under some circumstances. Here's the part that shocks most people. In many states, it is your responsibility to report this, not your doctor's. Your doctor might be legally prohibited from reporting it directly because of medical privacy laws. The burden falls on you. And if you don't report it, and you're later involved in an accident or a traffic stop and it comes out that you had a reportable condition that you never disclosed, the fines can hit $500 or more. And that's before we even talk about what happens to your insurance rates or your driving record. I'll explain this in plain English. The state is essentially saying, we trust you to tell us if something has changed about your health that might make driving more dangerous. And if you don't tell them, they treat it the same way they'd treat any other failure to comply with licensing requirements. Now, let's take a step back for a moment, because I want to talk about something related that's catching people off guard in a slightly different way. A lot of states have also changed their license renewal rules for seniors, and these changes are not well publicized. You might have been renewing your license the same way for 30 years. Walk in, pay the fee, get the new photo, walk out. Or maybe you've been doing it by mail or online. Easy, quick, no big deal. But in many states, once you hit a certain age, again it varies, but often somewhere between 70 and 75, you are now required to renew in person. You can no longer do it by mail. You can no longer do it online. You have to physically show up at a DMV office. And in some states, you're now required to renew more frequently. Instead of every 8 years, maybe every 4 years or every 2 years. And at that in-person renewal, you may be required to take a vision test that you haven't had to take in years. Here's what a lot of people don't realize about that vision test. Standards have changed. In some states, the minimum acceptable vision for driving has been quietly updated. If you haven't had your eyes checked recently, you might walk into that DMV renewal appointment thinking everything is fine and walk out without a license because your vision no longer meets the legal standard. That's not a punishment. That's not the state being cruel, but it is a rude awakening for a lot of seniors who had no idea the rules had shifted. Let's talk about another rule that's tripping people up, and this one involves medications. This is something I really want you to pay attention to, because it affects more people than almost any other issue we're going to talk about today. If you take prescription medication, and let's be honest, a lot of seniors do, some of those medications carry what's called a driving impairment warning. You may have seen it on your prescription bottle, a little yellow sticker that says something like, may cause drowsiness, or do not operate heavy machinery. Now, for most of your life, you probably looked at that sticker and thought, yeah, okay, I'll be careful. And maybe that was enough. But here's what's changed. In several states, driving while on a medication with a known impairment warning, even if you don't feel impaired, even if you've been taking it for years, can now be treated as driving under the influence if you're involved in an accident or a traffic stop. Not driving drunk, not driving on illegal drugs, driving on your legally prescribed, doctor-approved pharmacy-dispensed medication. I am not trying to scare you. I'm telling you this because you deserve to know it. If a police officer pulls you over and you're showing any signs of impaired driving, swerving slightly, reacting slowly, having trouble tracking, and they find out you're on certain medications, they have the legal authority in many states to cite you or even arrest you, and the fines associated with those citations can be substantial. The solution here isn't to stop taking your medication. Absolutely do not do that without talking to your doctor. The solution is to have an honest conversation with your doctor specifically about whether your current medications, individually or in combination, could affect your driving. Ask them directly. Write it down if you need to. And if you're ever uncertain about whether you should be driving on a given day, maybe you just started a new medication or you had a bad night's sleep and the medication hit harder, it's okay to give yourself a day off from driving. Here's something else I want to address because I've seen this come up a lot in comments and questions from seniors, and I think there's a real misunderstanding happening. Some people believe that if their doctor clears them for driving, they're automatically fine from a legal standpoint. And that's understandable. It makes intuitive sense. My doctor said, I'm okay to drive, so I'm okay to drive. But here's the thing, medical clearance from your doctor and legal compliance with your state's DMV requirements are two separate things. Your doctor can say, you're healthy enough to drive, but that doesn't automatically mean you've satisfied all of your state's reporting or renewal requirements. Those are administrative requirements, and you have to fulfill them separately through the DMV. So, even if your doctor says you're perfectly fit behind the wheel, you still need to make sure you've done everything the state requires of you. This is really important. I want to say it again. Your doctor's opinion about your fitness to drive is valuable and important, but it does not replace your legal obligations to your state's licensing authority. Let me tell you about a situation that I hear about more often than you'd think. Imagine a gentleman. Let's call him Frank. Frank is 74 years old. He's been driving for 55 years, not a single accident, a spotless record. His doctor tells him at his annual checkup that he's in great shape for his age. A little high blood pressure, but well controlled. Frank feels fine. He drives to the grocery store, to church, to his grandkids' baseball games. He has no reason to think anything is wrong. Then Frank gets a notice in the mail. His state is flagging his license for review because he missed an in-person renewal requirement that went into effect 2 years ago. He never got a clear notification about the change. He did his usual mail-in renewal, paid his fee, and assumed everything was fine. It wasn't. Now Frank has to appear at the DMV, take a vision test, which he hasn't had since his last eye doctor appointment 2 years ago, and complete a new application. While he's there, a clerk notices that a medication he listed on his form has an impairment warning. Suddenly, what Frank thought was a routine visit has turned into something much more complicated. Nothing happened to Frank that was irreversible, but he spent weeks dealing with paperwork, stress, and uncertainty that could have been completely avoided if someone had sat him down and explained these rules clearly. That's why we're here today, so let's get practical. Let's talk about what you actually need to do. Because knowing there's a problem is only half the battle. You need a plan. The first thing I want you to do is find out exactly what the age-based driving rules are in your state. I know that sounds simple, but it's harder than it should be. The information isn't always front and center on the DMV website. You may have to dig a little. Search for your state DMV senior driver requirements or your state older driver license renewal rules. Look for documents that specifically address drivers over 70 or over 75. Print them out if you need to. Keep them somewhere you can find them. The second thing is to check when your license needs to be renewed and whether you are now in an age group that requires in-person renewal. If you're not sure, call your state DMV directly. Write down the name of the person you spoke to and what they told you just in case. The third thing, and I cannot stress this enough, is to get a current eye exam, not the quick vision screen at the DMV, a real comprehensive eye exam from an optometrist or ophthalmologist. Make sure your current prescription meets your state's minimum vision requirements for driving. This is one of the most common reasons seniors lose their license unexpectedly, and it's one of the most preventable. The fourth thing is to sit down with your doctor, or have a phone conversation if that's easier, and specifically ask about your medications and driving. Bring a list of everything you take. Ask if any of them individually or together could affect your ability to drive safely. Ask if there are alternatives that would carry fewer risks. Take notes. This is an important conversation to have, and you deserve a straight answer. Now, I want to talk about something that I think is really important, and it involves having conversations with family members that can sometimes be difficult. If you have a parent or an older relative who drives, you may be in the position of noticing things that concern you before they do. Maybe you've been in the car with them recently and something felt off. Maybe they seem slower to react than they used to. Maybe they've had a small fender bender or two recently. I know these conversations are hard. Nobody wants to tell their father, who drove them to school every day for years, that they're worried about his driving. It can feel like you're taking something away from him. Independence, dignity, autonomy. Those are real and valid feelings, and you have to approach this with a lot of care. But here's the thing, it is far, far better to have that difficult conversation early on your terms as a family, than to have it forced on everyone by a serious accident, an injury, or a license suspension that comes without warning. If you're not sure how to bring it up, one gentle approach is to frame it around these very rules we've been talking about. Dad, I was reading about some new driving requirements for seniors in our state. Do you know if you've checked whether any of them apply to you? That opens a conversation without making it feel like an accusation. It makes it about information, not about judgment. I also want to give you a heads up about something that's happening more and more, and it has to do with scams. Whenever there are rule changes that affect seniors, scammers follow. They are watching for exactly this kind of confusion and anxiety, and they are ready to take advantage of it. Here's what to watch out for. You may receive a phone call, a text message, or even a letter in the mail claiming to be from your state's DMV or from a senior driver safety program. They will tell you that your license is at risk, or that you need to complete a mandatory online course, or that you owe a fine and need to pay immediately to avoid suspension. Let me be very direct with you. Real DMV communications almost always come by official mail. They will not call you and demand immediate payment. They will not send you a text with a link to a payment portal. They will not threaten to revoke your license within 24 hours if you don't pay right now. Those are all scam tactics. If you receive anything that makes you feel urgent, pressured, or scared, stop. Don't click anything. Don't call back any number that was given to you. Instead, hang up. Look up your state DMV's official phone number on their official website and call them directly to ask if there's actually anything you need to do. 9 times out of 10, there isn't. But even that 10th time, the real DMV will give you plenty of time and clear instructions to handle it properly. Let's talk about what's changing specifically in 2026, because there are some updates worth knowing about. Several states have either passed or are currently implementing new legislation that expands mandatory medical self-reporting requirements for senior drivers. If you live in a state that's been in the news for updating its traffic safety laws, now is the time to check if those updates affect drivers in your age group. Additionally, 2026 is seeing more states roll out what are called graduated license restoration programs. These are programs designed to help seniors who have had their license suspended or downgraded, maybe to a restricted license that only allows daytime driving or driving within a certain radius of home, to work their way back towards full driving privileges through supervised assessment programs. If you or someone you know has recently had driving restrictions imposed, it's worth asking your DMV whether a restoration program exists in your state. There are also new federal guidelines being implemented around autonomous vehicle safety features in older cars. This one is still developing, but some states are beginning to require that older drivers demonstrate familiarity with the safety assistance features in their vehicle. Things like automatic emergency braking and lane departure warnings. If you've recently bought a newer car, take the time to understand those features. They could actually protect you. And in some states, knowing how to use them correctly is becoming part of the licensing conversation. Here's the bottom line, and I want to leave you with this. Driving is not just a convenience. For millions of seniors, it is independence. It is the difference between making it to a doctor's appointment on time and missing it. It is being able to pick up your grandchildren from school. It is getting to church on Sunday morning without having to ask someone for a favor. It is dignity, it is freedom, and it is worth protecting. But protecting it means knowing the rules. It means staying ahead of the changes instead of being caught by them. It means having honest conversations with your doctor, with your family, with yourself, about whether your driving is still as safe as it has always been. The good news is that if you take the steps we talked about today, checking your state's requirements, getting your eyes tested, talking to your doctor about your medications, and staying alert to any renewal notices, you are doing everything right. You are being responsible, and that gives you the best possible chance of staying behind the wheel safely for years to come. Nobody is trying to take your keys. The system at its best is trying to make sure that everyone on the road, including you, has the information and the support they need to drive safely. So, use the system to your advantage. Know your rights, know your responsibilities, and know that you have more control over this than you might think. If this video was helpful to you, please share it with someone you care about. An older parent, a friend, anyone who might benefit from knowing this information. And if you have questions about your specific state's requirements, drop them in the comments below. I read everyone.